Welcome to The Cop and the Shrink, a podcast exploring mental health, law enforcement, and societal issues from the perspective of a police officer and a mental health professional. Have questions about current events, social media, mental health, or police matters? Visit thecopandtheshrink.com. Let's get this episode started with your hosts, Harold Bozeman and Dennis Carradine.
All right, welcome back to the Cop and the Shrink. Hey, visit us on the web at thecopandtheshrink.com. Go to any of our social media pages. Basically, it's everything / the Cop and the Shrink. I think it's everywhere. My co-host over here, Harold, has joined OnlyFans, but it's for us middle-aged men. It's just kind of weird, but that's okay. We're into it. Whatever.
Right. Happy Monday, everybody, with that thought.
Happy Monday. We got a couple of good topics today. Did you feel all right?
Yeah.
It's been kind of a wild week, right?
It's been a wild ride.
Wild ride. So before we get into anything, we wanted to again mention during our last show, we had mentioned our good friend Jim Wyatt. If you're watching us on YouTube, I'll put this right up. He has dedicated a line of shirts and stickers. I'm trying to make it right. A line of shirts and stickers on his website at greatcigarreviews.com to give to the Cop and the Shrink and also give to the Trauma Survivors Foundation. But you could see him, again, it's basically / Great Cigars on Facebook and Instagram. Go to the website, greatcigarreviews.com. You basically got what the website's about. Jim's is a Pennsylvania police officer in one of the municipalities.
Jesus, I told you we needed a blooper reel. I didn't mean start right now.
It's been one of those days. Look, and we're going to get into it in the current topics, but I woke up this morning with the news of Colin Powell's death, and that has thrown me off today. I'm not going to lie to you. That really has, well, I never really lie to you. I don't know why I qualify that. But that threw me off today. And we'll talk about that under current topics, but it really did. You get those zingers every now and then. You kind of wake up and you're thinking, my day's going to be great. It might be a Monday, but whatever. And then Colin Powell dead at 84 due to COVID complications. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this sucks. This sucks. But we'll talk about it. I digress a second because I'm tongue-tied because of that news. But going back to it, greatcigarreviews.com. Check out Jim. He's pretty amazing. Like we said last time, we might have our first sponsor. We're not sure.
Could be.
He'll give us $1 million for this. We'll see what happens. So other than that, you good?
Everything's great.
We got topics today. So we gave a presentation last week. We were training folks for our critical incident response team, our CISM team, and we were training officers. And we got into a topic that I thought would probably be a robust topic to continue to discuss. And I think on both ends, from the mental health side and also from the law enforcement side, we have issues based around all of them.
No, we have issues.
We do have issues. One of the biggest issues I think that we tend to see, and we talked to the group about this, was the disparity in age for the death of a police officer. So we mentioned in our trainings, and again, you could come to one of our trainings. You could see us. We're actually going to be down in Florida on February 4th at the Florida Mental Health Association, mm-hmm. and we're going to be presenting on a certain topic. And I'll be down actually on June 4th down in New Orleans presenting on stress in the operating room. So we give these presentations and we get into certain topics, and we talked about this statistic that the average U.S. male, the United States male, dies at age 78. That's the life expectancy, 78 years old. The average U.S. female dies, or life expectancy, is 82 years old. Okay, we give up on ourselves at 78. And then you look at the statistics that have been around for a very long time. Like these aren't statistics that we just make up. This is out there. You could check the web and so forth. That the average male police officer dies at 56. So what? A couple of years after retirement, basically.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at coming on in your early 20s, maybe serving for 30,
And
that puts you pretty close to, pretty close to death right at the time of retirement. I mean, you don't get to enjoy that retired life very much.
like literally, you enjoy about 6 months. A baseball season is what you enjoy, and then average age.
And I've been having this conversation with some of the members of the police departments that I know. Some of the folks have been there for 30, 35 plus years. We just had a retiree recently who was in her mid 60s. I think she was 64 when she retired from being a police officer.
Okay.
And I try to bring up to some of the people I work with, like we've had some people that were pretty close to us who were well known, who were legends in our department, who retired and then lived another 20 months. Like they kept on. We call it like chasing the next contract, right? They would wait for that next raise so it would go in their pension. They would wait for the next raise so it would go into their pension. But they chased it for so long that they retired and then survived less than 2 years post-retirement. And that's,
And our assumption is that primarily it's cardiac, right?
it's
So heart attack.
in
the heart
one of our
disease.
cases it was cancer, and and one it was heart disease.
And again, if we look at that and we look at the statistics with firefighters and EMS, it's not really far off. I mean, firefighters edge out a few more years. EMS maybe a few more years. But the reality is that it's roughly between 15 and 20 years before the average U.S. citizen is when we see a first responder die. And as you're pointing it out, literally, they have no time to care for it.
Their entire adult lives, they've been in the public service. When it's time to get out of that and be of some service to themselves, to enjoy their life separated from that, on their own, doing what they want, they don't get to enjoy very many years of that at all. If years, they don't get to enjoy very many years.
So that begs the question, right? Why? And again, what's the worst question you could ever ask in mental health is why, right? Because you typically get I don't know or because or whatever it is. But if we look at the reasoning and we look at officers right now, because officers at the beginning of their year, I don't think all agencies require it now, but at the beginning of their career, they have to go through physical fitness, they have to go through the academy and so forth. In your mind or in your experience, what happens from day one? We're out of the academy feeling probably the best fit that you'll ever get, because you look at the soldier, you look at the Marine, you look at the shipman or whatever it is that they come out of boot camp and they are literally in the best shape of their lives at that point. Same way with police, I think they're probably in the best shape of their lives. Firefighters, whatever it is, that's day one. What the hell happens that drops them 15 to 20 years below the normal?
I'll tell you, I think that in a lot of cases, there are some agencies, there are many agencies that do ongoing physical fitness evaluations, have ongoing or annual physical fitness requirements where you have to pass a test that's age appropriate, that's bona fide occupational requirement kind of relevant.
Right.
So they do have ongoing physical fitness standards and they have tests and evaluations for that. But I still think it's in the vast majority of police departments and probably fire departments as well that don't have that requirement, right? You pass the final PT test in the academy, you go out on the street and you're expected to stay fit of your own volition. And a lot of people do.
Oh, sure.
And a lot don't.
Do not.
And so as we go through this career and, you're running from one high stress situation to the other for 10 or 12 hours a day, you're working a rotating shift, which is hard on your body, your heart, and your stress levels anyway. And then you're eating your unhealthy meals while you sit in the car and you're drinking your coffee so you don't nod off at night. And just all these different things that are bad for you on their own all kind of come together in the confines of that police car, right? You go from 0 to 60 in an instant. You're drinking your coffee and you're using your nicotine to stay awake and keep some energy. Mm-hmm. You're eating crap fast food that you grab on the go. And it all ends up taking a toll. And I think, after that whole tug of war in your body and your mind for 30 years, when you get out, that's what your body's accustomed to.
Right.
And then it doesn't adjust to life without it.
Like you're not. So So in that stance, it's basically you are almost at all times just living on edge. You're not necessarily taking care of yourself because you can't or because it's designed not to.
I don't want to say you can't, because there's always time, right? A lot of the police departments local to us work a schedule where they at least their patrol officers, not their other division, the investigative divisions and things like that, work a more steady, like, set days. But for the patrol officers in most of our neighboring agencies, they work half the year, right? They work 11 or 12-hour shifts, and they work, they still work 80 hours every pay period, 162 rough hours a month. Right. But they have they have half the days in the year off. So there's no excuse for not taking care of yourself. But I think, when your body gets into this rut where you don't know if it's daytime or nighttime, you can't let your body get into a routine of sleep hours and wake hours because it goes back and forth all the time. Some guys just don't have the energy to go out and work out and do a long run or do a long bike ride. Some do. A lot of people do pay attention to their physical fitness. There are gyms at some of the police facilities. People have some time to work out on their meal breaks maybe. But in a lot of cases, I won't call it laziness. I'll just call it lack of motivation. Like, you got those 2 days off. You just had a weekend where you were running from complaint to complaint. There were shootings, there was violence. You were busy writing reports all weekend, and you've just got those 2 days off. You just kind of wanted to take a breather. And it's hard to drag yourself over to the gym on those days.
But that also goes into lifestyle choice too, right?
Right.
Because those 2 days off may not be we're going to go eat healthy foods, grab a salad, and work out and all. That may go into something else.
Right.
So we came up with a list. And let's talk about that something else that goes into health, because I want to intertwine this a little bit. So we came up with a list of the top 5 addictions potentially in the first responder world, right? And we could look at police with this as particular, but we also do go back, and I liked how you said, not every single agency has that physical fitness requirement and so forth. If you look at the vast majority of volunteer firefighters, there is no standard.
And that goes for the career firefighters at the volunteer agencies.
Yeah, there's no standard for physical fitness, but all of them have addiction. Now, we're here in the state of Delaware, if you haven't figured it out. I think we've said that on every single episode that we've had so far. But in the state of Delaware right now, kind of funny, not funny, haha, but just the way that we're set up, the home of tax-free shopping, the number one addiction in our first responder world, and that includes paid and volunteer firefighters, police, EMS, and so forth, is gambling. Now, every single county in the state of Delaware has a casino or a gambling area. Every single county has online betting. Every single county has more of those title loan places and so forth. It is right there, right in front of you at all times. Number 2 we put down was alcohol, which we'll talk about is kind of out there. 3, nicotine, and if you have nicotine, you must have number 4, which is caffeine.
Caffeine, indeed.
And then we have our debatable number 5. And I say debatable because I'm just being stubborn. It's not really debatable, but I'm just saying it's debatable. So number 5, we said adrenaline. So they're adrenaline junkies. Now, I said personally steroids, but I figure adrenaline and steroids could go hand in hand. Harold says no.
See, I disagree with the steroid because
then he tells me to go to hell. I don't know what it is.
If we're so stressed out and so beat up from work that we don't want to go to the gym, we'd go to the steroids, right? I don't think that you find that many people in the emergency services that are actively using steroids.
And I would disagree. Have you seen some of these guys? They're enormous. No, that's probably food. Well, okay, so we have our list.
Fat.
Right. Fat's fat. I get it. But no, there was a study out, and again, we talked about it was either Police Line or, whatever it is, EMS1 or what have you that was out there that said that there was a movement with anabolic androgenic steroids within first responders because it was an ability to get bigger, faster, better to get the bad guy or fight the fire or do what have you. Yeah, I just read that somewhere. It doesn't mean a damn thing. I just read it somewhere. But I do agree, adrenaline is a definite drug. So we came out with that. Let's go back a little bit. Okay, so cardiac disease tends to be our number one reason of death. Cardiac disease, number one. Number two is accidental, based on the first responder world. So cardiac, accidental, number three, cancer, which I think is probably all over the place. Number four. So I read this. This has to be true. It's under statistics. Number four. What do you think?
I think we were talking about this last week. One of the topics that we brought up to our stress management class was that on average, every 37 hours in this country, a police officer dies by suicide.
Yeah. Number four is suicide. So we have
to circle back to number two because we have to look at some of those accidentals. Deaths.
Yeah. So accidental, what they're saying is that, and again, and what they, as we always qualify they, again, certain sources come out with it, the American Psychological Association, Police One, a couple other ones. The accidental are lone car accidents, falling off roofs, having accidents around the house. Mm-hmm. We have to question those at some level.
And then there are a lot of sheriff's departments in rural areas. There are a lot of highway patrolmen and troopers who are legitimately killed accidentally outside their car, on accidents, on the side of the road. There are accidental deaths. But there is a correlation between dying by suicide and some of these deaths that have been deemed accidental for one reason or another.
So you have cardiac related, which we know is stress related completely. We have accidental, which may fall into suicide, and we have cancer, which is ultimately, questionable of where cancer comes from. So if we're working in environments, as a firefighter, as a police officer, where you're working around toxic stuff, you go into, a clandestine drug lab or whatever it is, there's things that are getting sprayed on these first responders. All of these don't seem like their fault. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think with proper care, any of these are, if not fully preventable, at least can be pushed off to some degree. And there's really, as a nation, there's really no excuse that we've gotten to the point where 6 years post-retirement or whatever it is an acceptable life expectancy for our first responders.
True. So let me go back and ask this. Let's go to our addiction list. How does alcohol, it's going to be a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How does alcohol factor in all of this? Tell everybody or tell me, how does alcohol fit in this picture of A, an addiction, B, how does this factor into that shortened timeline for life?
We have difficulty with problem drinking and with alcoholism, with alcohol addiction, because it's readily available, and more importantly, because it's legal, right? It's a way, everybody to some extent, I think, uses a drug as a means to escape something, to escape some feelings, to escape some pain, to escape the realities of their life, what have you. Everybody who has a substance abuse issue generally reports that they've used it to escape from something or create some feelings that they were missing. I think alcohol is the same way, and I think that the reason it's so prevalent in the first responder world is because it's legal, right? It's something that it's legal to use as long as you don't show up to work under the influence of it. It's legal. Whereas if you use some of the other substances, some controlled substances or some prescription substances, and you show up at work and you're tested for it, even if you're not under the influence of it per se, if you're tested for the presence of it, you could be fired.
Right.
And that's not the case with alcohol. As long as you don't show up with any alcohol in your breath at work or in your urine at work, it's legal to use on your days off. And so people use that to drown those feelings or to feel feelings that they don't otherwise have access to or whatever. So that's the problem with alcohol.
So this goes back to my steroid question. It's too expensive to test for steroids, right?
It's pretty expensive to test for steroids.
So again, they could be there. I'm not, Okay, you still don't buy it. I don't care. Whatever. No, but again, you're right. I mean, you'll rarely hear. You rarely hear an officer. You rarely hear, a firefighter or anything say, "Hey, you'll hear them say, hey, let's go to the pub, let's go down to the bar, let's go here, grab a couple of drinks after shift. Rarely are you going to hear them say, hey, Chuck, you want to go into the bathroom, get a bump of Coke, and get back to work. You're not going to hear that.
No.
You know, and plus the illegality of it all creates a mess for everybody with it. But alcohol, as we know, as a depressant, we have the problem drinking versus the true alcoholism. And we've contended, I think, that more and more, at least 85% in our estimation, are problem drinkers versus alcoholics. And the problem drinkers, as you said, are there to bury feelings, to not feel.
85% of all cops.
No, just
85% of the people with some trouble with alcohol.
questioning of the alcohol. You're not 85. We'll take that back. Nicotine and caffeine seem to go hand in hand,
I'm not a user of nicotine,
right?
but caffeine is my friend. Caffeine is,
Why?
I mean, it's the first thing I do. I get to work, we work on the roster for the day, and I put on a 12-cup pot of coffee that I intend to drink. So caffeine is my friend. And it's for the same reasons. I don't get enough sleep because
Right.
I'm in this constant push-pull. Except for a year of my career total, I've worked shift work my entire life.
Right.
And so my body's in this constant state of push and pull. I don't get a proper amount of sleep, whether I'm trying to sleep during the day or trying to sleep at night. I don't get a proper amount of sleep. So when it's time to drag myself to work,
Right.
I have to make that pot of coffee at the beginning of the shift so I can go out and be functional.
So
Then my problem is I don't stop drinking the coffee early enough to get an appropriate amount of sleep the next day either. So,
and doesn't it have at some point doesn't it have kind of the retro the retro feel to it? Like after a while you drink so much you just get tired.
so the first couple cups in the morning help me get started on the day, right?
Right.
And then after that, it's maintenance. It's not necessarily retro for me, but it's maintenance.
just
Like,
gotta
it
keep it
keeps
in
me
a low.
from crashing.
Right. And God help you, if you're somebody that has done something wrong towards that crash, right? Like your sergeant might get a little yelled at that point, right? So we go to it, and we talk about the problems, and as we're wrapping up the section a little bit. So what do we tell people? What do we give advice? Because ultimately, even in the mental health field, we're horrible with it. Cardiac disease is big in the mental health field because most live a sedentary lifestyle. We sit on our butts all day, talk to people. This is what my dad says. My dad said my job was sitting on my butt telling people what's wrong with them all day. And I said, well, you're not really wrong. So there's a sedentary lifestyle here. With policing, it's not necessarily sedentary, but it's bad lifestyle
But
habits.
it's stops and goes, right?
Yeah.
They say it's long periods of boredom.
Boredom.
Long periods of boredom punctuated with periods of high adrenaline.
Right. Colin Powell screwed you up too today, right?
Yeah, I'm all messed up too.
But you're right. It's those moments of like you're going 0 to 60. You have to pump your body up so fast, so quickly. And when you're just sitting there kind of bored out of your mind because nothing's going on, and then all of a sudden, bam, everything goes on, that creates a problem. So what do we tell people? Don't do it. Quit.
I mean, for all these things that we've discussed, I say the same thing we tell everybody: all things in moderation, right?
Right.
Drinking alcohol is supposed to be a social lubricant, not a way to hide yourself, not a way to drown your thoughts. We're not Peter Griffin. We're not going to drink until we can't feel feelings anymore, right? So it's supposed to be a social lubricant. Use it to have a couple at night to relax. Have one or two when you're out with your friends, but it's not supposed to be something you hide. You're not supposed to hide in the bottom of the bottle.
Right.
Everybody knows the risks of nicotine. I don't think I need to tell anybody about that. We talk about the shortened life. All these things are also believed to be carcinogenic.
Right.
Alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, bad food. All these things have, in one study or another, have all been called carcinogens.
Right.
And so we get to the end of this 30-year career using all of these things in a pretty regular way. It's no surprise that our bodies have suffered the consequences.
I also contend that people as a first responder world do not visit their doctor enough, or they don't build a team around them. I don't think they believe. I really don't believe that. I think they use doctors at times to help them come back into work, to do certain things. If something exotic or catastrophic is happening to them, like, Doc, I have this fungus on my hands and it looks like Aubrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors. I don't know what to do with it. I don't think that they're going as much as they should. So my advice, very simple, is that you need an A-team around you. You need that primary care doctor. You need a cardiologist. You need a mental health therapist. You need people that ultimately that you're going to visit a few times a year and maybe on a weekly basis just to get things straight. You need somebody basically to keep you on the straight and narrow.
So I'll close this out by saying that these things have all been recognized as issues in our professions. And so now we have police departments are finally starting to come around, fire service is finally starting to come around to the idea of general wellness, right? And all-encompassing wellness. They're doing mental health wellness. They're incentivizing physical wellness. So a lot of places will incentivize your insurance rates or even your pay if you meet certain physical fitness or physical exam requirements. So they're incentivizing wellness. The Fraternal Order of Police, the National FOP, has been building a sort of all-encompassing, holistic wellness program that they intend to roll out. And it's total body, it's total mind wellness. They even have physical wellness because we know that can be a source of stress as well. So we're finally coming around after all these decades to taking care of ourselves, to taking care of our wellness, and hopefully we'll start to see that life expectancy jump up and come closer in line with the regular population.
I want you around longer, buddy. We got a lot of show to do, so I want you around. So let's make it happen, right? Let's get that word out there. Hey, thanks for listening to The Cop and the Shrink on thecopandtheshrink.com. We're going to come back for section 2, but make sure you check us out on the web and check us out on social media. Stay tuned.
The Division of Wellness Services of the National Fraternal Order of Police is committed to leading the efforts to ensure the well-being of law enforcement officers. The FOP intends to no longer react to issues of critical stress affecting its members, but instead take a pre-act approach that is driven by trained peer support, research, empowerment of officers, awareness and stigma reduction, connections to service, and ongoing training and development. Information about the Wellness Division, resources, and publications can be found at fop.net/officer wellness. Donations to the National FOP in support of their Division of Wellness Services and other programs can be made online at nfop.firstresponderprocessing.com.
Welcome back to The Cop and the Shrink. Make sure you check us out on thecopandtheshrink.com. I say that after every section. Hopefully they'll figure it out by now. Check us on social media. Hey, help us grow our social media presence. Go to us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Dancer, on Prancer. Just check us out all on the interwebs with it. Plus, also head on over to the TraumaSurvivorsFoundation.com or .org, and you can check out our merch a little bit. You could also check out the things that we have. We have our wine by Wagon House Winery. This is the Captain's Punch, aptly named after Captain Davis, retired Chester police captain.
Who incidentally can't really punch anymore.
No. We love Cap. He's an amazing guy. Survivors IPA over at Big Oyster Brewery, and check out survivorsbeveragecompany.com or drinksurvivors.com. Get some of that caffeine that we talked about. We have this huge bag of caffeine in front of us that we talked about. It's bad. But drink it. It's delicious. It's whatever you could do. And then also our little bit of merch. If you could see it, this is amazing. It's a cup here. We're going to develop different T-shirts and styles. But go to thecopandtheshrink.com, go to our merch section, and buy stuff. Harold, I'm pissed off.
Of course you are.
I am pissed off.
What would a Monday be without that?
It's a pissed off Monday. Not because of what you think, because of what I heard. I got inflamed, and I'm looking this direct quote up. All right, and we have an issue with it. I don't even want to say her name right because we didn't, but I will say it right. So we all know this Candace Cameron Bure. It is not Burr. It is Bure. And she made a quote this past week, and not only did it upset me, it truly upset me, but it's going to go into the topic that we want to discuss, and I want to read this. So in this statement that she said, and I'll read the exact quote, but I'll read how it came up. It says, Candace Cameron Bure says her time as a daytime TV co-host took a toll on her mental and emotional health. This hasn't taken a toll on me yet. I just want to put this out there. The podcast hasn't taken a toll on me. I think we're okay.
So far, all good things.
All good things at this point. The actress confessed that she's glad her days representing that was a little Delco right there, representing a conservative voice on the roundtable talk show The View are behind her on this week's episode of ABC's Behind the Table podcast. Quote, "The stress and the anxiety, I actually have a pit in my stomach right now," she said. "There was only one type of stress that I've ever felt in my life. That came from that show. And I have PTSD. Like, I can feel it. It was so difficult, and to manage that emotional stress was very, very hard." Bure was a co-host on the program from 2015 to 2016 for seasons 19 and 20.
Let me start by saying 19 and 20 were about 18 seasons too long.
Right.
I get that Candace was stressed out by her experience on the show. We were talking to our producer before the show, and we all agreed that even watching the show is a little stressful.
Right. But can I do my hesitant sigh again?
Please.
I can't find the strength in me not to call her an idiot. I really can't. Look, when you... Mother... What? But... I put it back out there that even though that she was a part of this View, unless now this is the same show because I really don't watch it. I don't care. I really don't. These are those things that people, even on a podcast, you talk about nothing and you're on TV and you view it as the most important thing in the world as you're talking about unimportant things. Okay, so if you're talking about a celebrity dating another celebrity, although that people enjoy that, I don't know at what point that is going to be way too stressful. Now, this is the one, was Whoopi Goldberg on The View?
Yes.
Okay. Joan Behar.
Joy
Behar, whatever her name is.
The joyous woman in the world, yeah. Joy.
Yeah, Joy Behar and all that. Unless Whoopi or Joy took a knife to Candace Cameron Bure's throat or threatened to kill her or threw a bomb at her, I don't care what kind of stress she has. It's anxiety. It might be depression, and God bless her. I hope she finds help for anxiety and depression, but that's not PTSD. That is not post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh.
So that goes into the trivialization of trauma. How many people have you heard, legitimately, that will say that they are traumatized by X, Y, and Z?
Right. I mean, you hear it all the time. You hear people minimizing these serious diagnoses, right? If they have to organize their sock drawer in a certain way, they have OCD, right? They're OCDing today when they put their DVDs away. Or
OCD, it's a verb.
Yeah, right. And it becomes a verb. It's the same thing with Candace, PTSDing. Right. And the seriousness of these diagnoses and the seriousness of these illnesses is something that's minimized far too often. For her to say that she's got PTSD from a job that she had sitting in a chair, arguing with a bunch of chickens, and getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, that's not generally how PTSD works.
I don't think that's ever how it's going to work. What is that? I unfriend you. That's not how any of this works, right? So I put the definition down, and I said post-traumatic stress disorder, and this is according to the American Psychiatric Association, is a psychiatric disorder that may occur in people who have experienced or witnessed a traumatic event such as a natural disaster, which arguably The View might have been a natural disaster.
It certainly is a disaster.
A serious accident, a terrorist act, war or combat, or rape, or who have been threatened with death, sexual violence, or serious injury. So I'm going with the last one, a serious injury. Maybe Joy Behar did. Said, Candace, I am going to destroy you. I am going to do the Stone Cold Stunner on you if you show up to this show again. I literally drove me a little nuts. So I went on, and I answered that. That was my answer to it. I also said, you do not get PTSD from A, being offended by a social media post. B, a statue. We'll talk about these. We'll go back and talk about these. C, your political candidate not winning an election, although there is question. Where are we? D. Having your feelings hurt. Number 5, being talked to rudely because you were acting like an idiot. Having someone step in front of you in line at Starbucks We've all watched the TikTok videos of this one. You are not traumatized because somebody had to get their Mocha Luca Pape Frappe latte before you. You were not traumatized. Your feelings are hurt.
You were irritated?
Irritated.
Pissy, maybe?
Pissy. Not PTSD.
No, not that.
Seeing a person of a different race, color, or creed. You do not
just seeing?
Just seeing it. This was seeing it.
Okay.
Oh my God! Look, it's an African American. I am PTSDing right now. This is stupid. Look, there's a Protestant. I'm traumatized. Not getting enough likes on a social media post. We have literally...
So just to be clear, I don't want to interrupt, but I will. These are things that people reported
Yes.
being traumatized by?
These are things people are being traumatized by to the point that they believe that they have PTSD. Absurd. But we also go into it because we'll talk about it. We have young TikTokers and young Instagrammers that have committed suicide based on not getting the likes that they require, not getting the lifestyle that they like because they get paid to have millions of followers. I mean, I would love it. I'm not going to get stressed out about it. If this show blows up and everybody listens to it and we get 800 million followers, more than any Kardashian in the entire planet, we get those followers, I'm not checking out on you, man. I think we do.
I mean, thank the Lord.
Well, I think we do Daily Show at that point, you know? So the other one, not having people understand your lifestyle. So if you dress as a lamp and people don't understand that, I don't think that is traumatizing.
Well, I mean, any time I bother to turn on the television, people are not understanding my lifestyle, my career choices, my worldview. It doesn't traumatize me. It amuses me.
Right.
It doesn't traumatize me to have people not understand my worldview or my lifestyle or my career choice. It's not traumatizing.
Well, that goes back to our one episode where we talked about what's the worst question people can ask you. That in and of itself would say that they are not agreeing with your lifestyle, right? They come out to me and say, oh, well, I have a friend and he has ups and downs and this or that, or, oh my God, don't analyze me or whatever it is. That's not going to traumatize me. It might annoy me at some times. It might make me giggle, I've diagnosed many of people.
So I think the world has gone so far off the rails that people equate, first of all, I hate to even say it, but people equate being offended with being attacked or traumatized. If people would stop being so offended and just worry about themselves, maybe they wouldn't feel so attacked or so traumatized. Maybe let yourself be offended. And we talked about this a little bit in our seminar last week. We talked about what we called stress inoculation.
Right.
They do it in boot camp. They do it in police and fire academies. They scream at you. They call you names. They startle you awake from the middle of the night from a dead sleep. They go take you from zero activity to 60. Like I said, you're going to encounter in the police car. They do this stress inoculation, right? They get you accustomed to being stressed out by things. They get you accustomed to being surprised, startled, immediate physical activity, losing sleep, so that when the time comes to experience it in the real world, your mind has a file for that. Your mind says, I've experienced this before, I've dealt with this before, we're good, let's go. Right. Let's get in the fight. Everyone now wants to live their lives so sheltered that they attack everything that offends them. Rather than saying, well, that, I didn't like that, but it didn't affect me. It didn't harm me. And all I have to do is scroll on or change the channel or walk away, and it's no longer a factor in my world. But no, now everyone who's offended by something needs to attack the source of that offense and do away with it and eliminate it. We're going to get to the point where everybody lives their life in a round, padded, silent room with no exposure to any stimuli whatsoever.
Don't you dare threaten me with a good time.
So that they're not offended by anything.
But and then the last one is people not understanding your jokes. So you're saying it right there. It's like, if I make a joke and you don't laugh at it, and I'm offended because you don't laugh at one of my jokes, then ultimately I'm traumatized? I mean, come on. At what level does it stop? What level do we actually pay? And if we go back to it, the first order of business within PTSD is having your life threatened of serious death, injury, being a witness to it, being a part of it, and what have you. We're looking at something that, yes, or if you're in a car accident, can you get PTSD? Yes. If you're involved in a shooting, can you get PTSD? Yes. There is potential for it. But even if we look at everybody in the United States, there is less than 7%, the average is 3 to 7%, can actually claim a diagnosis of PTSD. But yet we have celebrities with large followings, because Ms. Beret, or Mrs. Beret, has a very large following from back in her days as a child star and all that stuff, that is now trivializing PTSD. Is basically telling that soldier that had his entire company blown out from under him in the Afghan war that I am exactly like you because I was on a TV show.
That her experience with Whoopi was just as bad as that airman's experience with an IED.
Yeah, the exact same. What's that? Maybe. It's worse because I had to deal with Joy Behar, and it was so bad. And then when I went home, and okay, let me take it back. If she was stressed and anxious, I get it. Christ, I'm a shrink, for God's sakes. I get anxiety and depression is one thing. We are very specifically talking about trivializing a serious diagnosis of PTSD, which the people that get it, tell me if I'm wrong with it, the people that get this do not want this.
No, it's not a badge of honor. It's not something you get on and trumpet about to garner sympathy from your fans and followers, right? It's a lot of people who suffer with PTSD don't want anyone to know. They hide it. They conceal it. We have military members that join the police department. We have police officers and firefighters who are ultimately at some point in their career diagnosed with PTSD, right. And they don't want to tell a soul. Mental illness, like a true diagnosis of something debilitating like PTSD, still, unfortunately, in this country carries a good deal of stigma with it, right? Because especially in the public safety careers, they're afraid that it's going to cost them their job. If I have a diagnosis, are they going to take my weapon away? Right. Are they going to bench me? Am I going to be pulled off the street? Am I going to lose my job? Maybe I'll get passed over for promotion. Maybe they don't want me to be transferred to an investigative unit, what have you. Right. There's such a stigma attached to it that nobody wants to advertise it unless you're advertising it on your socials to get some sympathy and some attention. It's wrong. It's wrong of her to claim that. And if she's been diagnosed with it, then that's between Candace and her therapist. But it's not something that you generally see people who have been diagnosed advertising. It's not something that they trumpet about and they brag about having.
Now, she did say something interesting where she said this was the only and greatest stress of her life. And she equated it to PTSD. Is it now become a buzzword that we, as our society, as therapists, as law enforcement and mental health, have we not educated people enough? Have we not told people enough what exactly PTSD is?
I mean, I'll be honest, you as a therapist might have a different role. I'm concerned primarily and only with educating our people about it. I will educate first responders about PTSD, risk factors, warning signs, things like that. I'm not concerned with educating the general public. If they want to know, they can go find out. I'm just offended I'm just offended when they use it, as a tool. When they use it as a means to get attention, right. and it's not accurate. That's what offends me.
Right. No, and it should. We had, the wife and I went up to this little. I'll give them a shout out. Maybe they'll be sponsors right now. It's called the Sugary up in Newtown Square, Pennsylvania. It's a really nice little ice cream boutique. I like it. A little boutique there that has some Baskin and Robbins and they'd have Bassett ice cream. It's a very cute boutique. I like it. And we'll go up there, get some ice cream. Okay, it's not the best for me. I shouldn't be eating it, but whatever. It's delicious. So I go up there, and a gentleman walks in. Now, I didn't question. I wasn't looking for stolen valor or anything like that. I didn't care. So the counter girl was probably the ripe old age of 17. And here's the wife and I, not the ripe old age of 17. And I'm just kind of standing there. And the guy walks in, and in a very loud, almost obnoxious manner. Now, it was obnoxious. He hit the door and he yells out, he goes, "Do you still give discounts to Navy veterans of 25 years that have post-traumatic stress disorder?" Yells this. Harold yells this. Yells this. Obnoxious. Yells this. And I went, oh my God, like, what was this? So I turned to the girl, and the girl said, I guess so. You know, she's 17. She doesn't know. So he goes outside, and I guess he's talking to the wife or whatever it is. And I said, how much of a discount would you get? She said, like 5%. And I said, so he came in, this Sugary, again, Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, very nice place, came into this ice cream place and yelled from the front door if they give a discount to a Navy veteran that has PTSD for a 5% discount.
So what's he going to save, like 82 cents on his...
I doubt it. I doubt it'd be 82 cents. It literally is to the point now that we have people, and look, out of the 100% of people that I know or have diagnosed or have worked with as PTSD, less than 1% wear it as a badge of honor. Less than 1%. That literally walk around and do what this guy does.
So 1% of 6% of the American population.
1%, less than 1% of the 6% of the population. It's ridiculous. So now we have like a guy like this. We have a Mrs. Beret at this point. And again, I am not castigating anybody with a serious mental illness. I am not castigating anybody with SMI. I am just saying, let's make this appropriate. You know, that if you have PTSD, you need help. You need to get into a therapist. PTSD is very much like cancer. It can go into remission, and you have remissible periods, but it does not go away. It's a lifelong diagnosis.
And let's be fair. She is the subject today because she's the latest one to do this. Yeah. But it's done, and it's done a lot, and it's never acceptable. I mean, she just happens to be today's example because she's today in the news.
Right.
There are others who do it, say it, and it's never acceptable. I mean, if, like I said, most people who are diagnosed with it aren't going to advertise it. And if she isn't diagnosed with it and she's just doing it for the attention and just doing it for the clicks, that is very wrong.
Oh, God, yeah. Very, very wrong. That's what upset me, I guess. I don't know. I guess. It's Monday. So you might be listening to this on another day. It's a Monday here. But again, we go back to it. Like I said, less than 1% that I've seen that have done it, but people have done it, you know, where they wear it. I was watching a video of a gentleman that was on an air flight, and he was wearing a Navy veteran hat. And I'm not picking on the Navy. I know I mentioned the Navy twice. I'm not picking on the Navy. And he's wearing a naval veteran hat on his head, and the flight attendant asked him to put on his mask. And he got exceedingly offended and started cursing at the flight attendant and said, how dare you tell a Navy veteran who has PTSD to put on his mask? How dare I defended this country. And the person that posted the video was a Marine veteran. And he had said that this not only was a horrible display, but was also something that should never be done. That the people that wear those hats and wear those insignias and have a greater responsibility.
They represent something larger than themselves.
Yes. But they're not. They're not doing anything other than themselves at that point. So I think we have issues all over the place with this. She just, Candace Cameron Bray just pissed me off.
She just happens to be the target of your ire because she's in the news today.
She was in the news.
Could have been anyone.
It really could have been. It could have been anybody that has done this today. But, in all truth, there's enough out there. Go to ptsd.org, the VA, the National Institute of Health, the National Institute of Mental Health. Please look up not only the definition, but look up at signs or symptoms. If you have a loved one struggling with any of the symptoms of PTSD, they require medical as well as mental health help. They require things that ultimately that professionals need to give them. That this isn't a joke and is not given just strictly because of stress or because, whatever, you're offended or somebody didn't get your joke. It's literally because of a trauma or tragedy. And then if that's the case, they need help.
Agreed.
Agreed. And also go to the NAMI. Let's put them out there, National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. Tons of resources out there. So we are at our time. Our producer, is staring at us. He scowled. So, again, thanks for listening to The Cop and the Shrink. Visit us at thecopandtheshrink.com. Next section, hey, man, current topics. We're going to go over a few. We'll see you in a little bit. You have seen their faces and read their stories. Our hospital heroes and first responders are remarkable. Their strength is inspiring as they continue to work around the clock in the fight against COVID-19. Throughout the pandemic, they have had limited downtime and limited access to prepared meals. Our hospital heroes are working in extremely stressful environments, literally placing their own safety at risk to help the sick and dying. Our mission is to show these frontline workers that we, the community they are caring for, supports and cares for them through the simple act of providing them with a prepared meal to help sustain them through the day. To complete this mission, we are partnering with local restaurants to deliver quality food directly to hospitals, urgent cares, testing centers, treatment centers, nursing facilities, and first responder stations. We have delivered nearly 25,000 meals to over 60 locations in Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland. We have been honored to help these amazing men and women. The meals we bring are met with such gratitude. In those moments, as the meals are set up, we see their gratitude in the form of tears and laughter. A simple meal can provide hope in the face of this terrifying disease. The Trauma Survivors Foundation's Hospital Heroes Food Drive has the incredible privilege of coming into the worlds of our hospital heroes and first responders at the most difficult time in their lives. For a $6 meal donation, you can help a hospital hero and a struggling restaurant stay focused and positive through the COVID-19 pandemic. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, but we still need your help to see our hospital heroes through this fight. Our heroes are why we do what we do, but you are the how. Your donation helps us provide food and hope to our frontline heroes. Your donation makes hope stronger than fear. Text Hospital Heroes to 44321 to donate a meal to a hero. Please visit us at hospitalheroesfooddrive.org to learn more about our mission. All right, welcome back to The Cop and the Shrink. Remember, go to thecopandtheshrink.com. Again, another shout out to our buddy Jim over at greatcigarreviews.com. Check him out. Buy some merch from him. He's got T-shirts and stickers. That's going to help us out. And also get to us. Buy some merch from us, please. Also wanted to say that we have a couple of deliveries this week and next for our Hospital Heroes food drive that we are doing. We're picking out a couple of units and stations. Remember, we have delivered throughout COVID. This program has been very robust. We have delivered over 26,000 meals to police, fire, hospitals, workers, and so forth for different restaurants. So we have a couple we're going to be going after this next week and so. We also are going to be paying a very, very special visit for October, which October is Cancer Awareness Month. So it'll be up on the website. It'll be on the Trauma Survivors Foundation and also on thecopandtheshrink.com. Cool.
Very good.
Very good. Do you have any announcement? I've been announcing everything. I'm a little off the rails today, I think. It's all that caffeine. But any announcements you got? What's going on?
I have no announcements to make.
No announcements at all?
Nothing.
No? You all right?
I'm letting you make all the announcements.
I'm making all the announcements. This
You're
is
like
horrible.
our spokesmodel.
I really am. This is
the Heidi Klum of trauma.
Ooh, that's a reference. So current topics, man. We were talking about, and I want you to take topic number one with this one, because this one I think is very near and dear not only to you but all to the brethren of the FOP. Qualified immunity. Talk about it.
So in the past several days, the Supreme Court has handed down two decisions reversing lower court decisions and upholding the principles of qualified immunity for law enforcement officers. And the reason that this is important is because there's been such a political movement in this country, spilled over into a general public movement in this country to end qualified immunity, or what they believe is qualified immunity for police officers.
Define qualified immunity.
So I was going to talk about the misperception for some.
Okay.
The misperception first is that this principle of qualified immunity shields police officers from wrongdoing. If they knowingly and willingly use too much force, violate someone's rights, violate the Constitution, do some bad act, commit a crime, they believe that qualified immunity principles protect law enforcement from those things, and that simply isn't true. The reality is qualified immunity protects law enforcement officers from civil liability, from civil lawsuits, when they act in good faith in the performance of their official duty under the color of being a government employee, and that they have been deemed not to have violated someone's rights, violated the law, or violated policy. So it's when an officer acts in good faith and complies with their understanding of the law, the policy, the Constitution, people's constitutional rights. When they act in compliance with all those things, and they're following policy, and they act what they have been trained as appropriate ways,
Right.
it protects them from civil liability in a personal way. That still doesn't say that the person who has been the victim of what they perceived as wrong treatment can't sue the agency, the municipality, the executive of that municipality, or what have you.
Right.
So it's the misperception goes two ways. It's that the belief that people have no recourse if they're mistreated, and the belief that all bad behavior is protected, and they're both wrong.
Good.
People do have recourse. They can still recover damages from an agency or from a government or from an elected official if a police officer acting under the color of law and under the umbrella of that employment acts in a bad way.
Okay.
It just protects the officer from being sued as an individual person.
So let me give an example and tell me if I'm on alignment with this. Officer is chasing a bad guy. Bad guy goes into a crowd or whatever it is, gets in a car, runs away. Officer comes up to a car that's very similar to the bad guy's car, pulls that car over and tries to arrest the individual, tells the individual to get out. Okay? In my mind, the officer is doing it. He just has the wrong car. Right? But we've seen examples of this where that driver then sues the department because you have unlawfully, quote unquote, stopped that driver. That
Okay.
officer this would be qualified immunity, right?
That would be an officer who's presumably acting in good faith, sees a car that is the same or similar, stops it, with the intent to investigate, to see if that is bad guy in question. He's acted in compliance. He's acted in good faith. As long as the stop didn't violate the law or violate policy, everything was done in compliance with that. Whether or not that person prevails in their unlawful arrest or unlawful detention lawsuit against the municipality or the agency is one thing. But if the officer was acting in accordance with all of the rules of his or her employment, then they would be shielded from being an individual civil defendant in a lawsuit. Now, that's police officers who break the law, police officers who use drugs, steal, intentionally assault people, that act in a bad way. We want them gone as much as anyone else, and they can still be arrested, prosecuted, sued civilly, and all of these things, even with qualified immunity in place, because qualified immunity doesn't immunize you from bad behavior.
Right.
It immunizes you from acting in a way that you believed was proper and complied with codes, laws, and policies.
But it has to be in compliance with those codes, laws, and policies.
Right.
It can't be just something like, I felt I did the best thing, but what you did was not in compliance.
Right.
What is it? You could be the righteous man, but you could also be the wrong man.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. How does that factor into, defunding, though? Does it?
It's two separate issues, but the proponents of both tend to be the same people, right? They want to be able to punish bad officers, and so do good officers.
Right.
And they think we need fewer police. They think that the police eat up too much of the municipal budgets, or that there are too many, or that they're paid too highly. So it's usually the same crowd pushing both ideas,
Right.
But they're really two separate issues.
So because I think they get blurred, and I could be wrong, because I think we'll defund the police because ultimately, or at least I've heard that battle cry, we'll defund the police because the police are bad and they do these bad behaviors, so they should also be prosecutable.
Right, and intentional bad behavior is prosecutable, and mistakes are not prosecutable generally. Good faith mistakes are mistakes.
So if somebody came to you and said, I believe an officer did X, Y, and Z wrong to me, then that is actually an investigatable offense,
and is investigated.
Is investigated.
I mean,
okay.
you know, professional standards offices, internal affairs, people know them as, things like that, Office of Professional Responsibility in our state police, all those things. If a citizen has a complaint and they voice that complaint, they file that complaint with the agency, it's investigated. It's investigated in every case. I don't think that I know of any internal investigations unit that has ever said, go away. Like, we've heard your complaint, get out. No, they're going to look into it. They're going to look at the veracity of it. They're going to look at the validity of the complaint. If you know, and if the investigation takes a course that shows the officer engaged in some misconduct, then they're punished. Ultimately, they're punished internally. And if they've crossed the line into criminality, then those bureaus of professional responsibility and internal affairs and so forth will refer the criminal case to their superiors and to the criminal investigations units. I mean, it's people think that it's prevalent. A certain segment of our population think it's prevalent that there's the thin blue line, as it's always been called, where we stand behind the line and we protect our own. We don't want to be seen as the bad guys, and we don't want to be seen as associating with the bad guys any more than anybody else does. So if we have bad actors in our midst, we work to get rid of them.
Right. Well, a bad cop not only hurts the public, but it hurts police force. It hurts law enforcement.
Yeah,
a bad cop's a bad cop, right? You know, and again, it's very similar to a mental health person. Is that, you know, we have to police our own. You know, in the mental health world, you know, if say there's an ethics violation in mental health, we have to police them. So we basically have to make contact with them and say, hey, we heard that there is this ethic violation, and it's a therapist to another therapist. And if the therapist doesn't comply and stop using that ethical violation, then it's a letter, and then it becomes, now it goes to the board of regulations and so forth. There's active things in place that ultimately would take care of, quote unquote, a bad officer at that point, right?
And there should be. And I think that the biggest part of the issue is we are the most visible arm of the government, right? We're the government. We're uniformed, we're highly visible, we're out in and among the public. We're the most visible arm of the government.
Right.
The people that you elect, people that you vote for and put in office, they write the laws, they sign the laws, they enact the laws. Right. And then we are sent out to enforce the laws. So ultimately, people have grievances with the government. They don't like why they've been arrested. They don't like why they've been stopped. They don't like how how their journey through the criminal justice system has gone. Not understanding that we're the tool. We're like the end user tool. We're not the programmers. We're the tool. We're the arm of the government that enforces the laws that the people you voted for wrote and signed and enacted.
Right.
We're just sent out there to enforce it.
Which is always wild to me, because yet we'll castigate the police. We'll go after the police, you know, and try to get them fired. But yet we continue to put people in place in higher positions in government that are doing these egregious acts, and they stay.
Well, if you look at the upper Midwest, maybe like right on the edge of Lake Michigan, if you look at the upper Midwest and the West Coast,
right,
you see what's happening is the politicians who write and enact and execute these laws are standing with the people who are blaming the police. Why? Because they don't want it exposed who is really at fault for these grievances. Right. The politicians are the ones that created the problems, that created the laws, you know, and they stand with the people who are anti-police to shield themselves from the fact that they're the cause. The politicians are the cause of the problems.
Right. Well, case in point, I did, you know, when I was teaching at Penn State, I did a class about, you know, the crazy laws of Pennsylvania, you know, these obscure laws of Pennsylvania. And one of the laws in Pennsylvania that was an enforceable law was that students were not allowed to walk on any of the grass areas on any state university campus. They were not allowed to walk on the grass, and it was an arrestable violation if there, and there's paths in the grassways in every higher education.
And frisbee playing and sunbathers and
everybody's out doing that. But yet that was a law that was passed not by a police officer, period. That none of those laws, none of like fishing on horseback was not passed by any police officer, but yet the police officer is held to the standard that that's your law. You made that law, and now you're jamming me up for a law you made. When in fact, the officer was never around. That one individual officer never, ever, ever passed that law.
Why are you arresting me for this? Because the senators you put in office made this a law. They
Right.
magree this illegal, and that's why we're arresting you for it.
Right? Why are you pulling me over because
Vote
I
differently.
ran a red light? Come on. I agree. I think the qualified immunity in and of itself, in good faith, it makes sense. It really makes sense because in that way, yeah. And then we got, we can go over like citizens arrest and all that.
And let's be
garbage.
honest, if people are genuinely harmed
Right.
by what is later deemed to be a bad law or, a good faith, but maybe at some point improper arrest or, they're harmed in a use of force, but the use of force is within policy. If somebody's harmed by something,
Right.
they still have an outlet. They still have recourse. They can still collect damages and be made whole. They just don't get to sue the life out of that police officer and her family.
Right. They're as long as they're doing things by the book and by the law, they should be held in a certain standard, right? That makes sense to me. Good topic. I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
Switching topics a little
Switching
bit.
topics.
Switching topics. So we've all seen them, we've all heard them, and I think we've all been a little scared by them. But the ATVs and the motorcycle, or actually dirt bikes is what we call them. I guess they're motocross bikes or whatever it is,
Right.
in the large cities. Philadelphia has had an incredible problem with them. Washington, D.C., Wilmington,
Baltimore.
What you're seeing, and why we bring it up as a topic, because there's a couple of thoughts into this one, and how it works into the psychology of the world and also into law enforcement, because there are some direct laws that have been made that now we're starting to see citizens not understand the laws to this. Is that we're having, and it's hard to say gangs, but a large grouping of individuals that are on ATVs, motocross, that none of them have license. None of them have a license plate on them. They're non-registered vehicles.
Right.
The majority of them are stolen. I mean, that's come to fruition, that a majority of them are stolen. And they're blowing through intersections in large cities. They're driving on sidewalks. They're doing these.
There have been instances of them at a stopped intersection assaulting drivers of
Right.
cars and intimidating damaging vehicles and things like this. So
We're now having citizens, because it becomes a nuisance. I mean, there's one thing where it's a nuisance, it's a problem, but now we're having it where citizens are coming out and saying that they're frightened. Like they're legitimately, definitely afraid of the violence and all of these and the accidents and everything involved with it.
and it's a genuine public safety issue.
Policing at this point, they were told in Philadelphia, and it's probably everywhere else, I would assume Wilmington's the same way, that the law came out to say that, that they were illegal. But yet, this past weekend, there was over 6,000 of them in a rally driving through Center City, Philadelphia. What is going on?
I wish I knew. It's what a lot of the instances I've seen of it have been. It's kind of a way to show off, right? It's a little bit of bravado. They ride through the streets, they ride through the intersections. It's easy to maneuver. So we find them either victimizing people and getting away with it, or riding for the thrill of it. And a lot of them will ride up to and taunt the police and then ride away. Like a little bit of look what I can do. Like a little bit of bravado and poking the bear. Go up and taunt the police and say you can't catch me, and then ride away. Ride through neighborhood courtyards or sidewalks where we can't go. And so there's a little bit of that involved with it. And I mean, there's really, to date, I haven't heard a viable solution for it, like anything that's really going to work to stop it. There have been efforts undertaken in different jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. Some places will use drone technology, follow them with drones and pick them off where they're hidden, or will instruct police officers to take plainclothes and unmarked cars and just see if they can observe where they're going and picking them up, or where they're going and being stored. Most jurisdictions now will not pursue these things, and the people the people who are complaining and saying that they're a public safety hazard and they want something done, I fully understand that. but we can't pursue these things. And there are a lot of reasons. We pursue them and they cause an accident and hurt someone else, or we pursue them and they flee to the point where they're reckless and they get hurt or killed.
Mm-hmm.
That responsibility, that liability
Comes
falls
back,
back on the police, and then we're talking about qualified immunity all over again, right?
Right.
So we will not pursue these.
Right.
We're not going to chase kids on dirt bikes on city streets through busy intersections at rush hour. So there's not really, there have been a lot of things tried. There hasn't been a really effective solution.
Right.
And then you find people saying, well, they're just kids, they're having fun, it's an outlet. So there are two sides of the argument, right?
Right.
And it's just like, let them go, let them do it. And then there's a third argument. If they had a place to ride, they would go there. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think part of the allure of this is riding through the streets, taunting the cops, victimizing people, doing something you know is wrong and getting away with it. I think that's part of the allure for some of these kids anyway.
Sure.
So I think if we built a multiple millions of dollars dirt bike and ATV track out on the edge of the city somewhere, it wouldn't be utilized.
Right. Well, it's the same argument of getting a skate park. You know, if you build a skate park, then all of your skateboarders and roller skaters and all are going to just go to that skate park, and that's not the case. I mean, Love Park, case in point, one of the most videoed and recorded places for skaters, and that is not a skate park.
Love Park, and then the little board game park next door.
Yeah,
Love
yeah,
Park,
that's
where
about lack of a better word.
plenty of
right?
good stuff to grind on and jump off of.
Yeah,
there,
it's,
so.
but I think the fear of it now is that obviously all of them are loud. You know, they're coming down the street, and it's not one or two of them; it's in mass. They're doing, you know, wheelies and stunts on it and all. None of them are licensed. These are not licensed insured
None of them wear
drivers.
protective gear.
Yeah.
And I mean, they don't care. They're risk takers anyway. They're engaging in risky behavior. They're not thinking about eyewear or helmets anyway, but it just adds to the extent of the problem.
And you know, the current topic being is that, you know, that like I said, it's happening so often now that it's in the news quite often. And when you go up to Philadelphia, you know, hey, look, you know, we're 30 minutes outside of Philadelphia in Wilmington. It's not, you know, we're not that far away. You know, personally, I go to Philadelphia all the time. I love Philadelphia. But now you're going up and you're experiencing this, and it is quite intimidating. It really is. Even for a seasoned person that has dealt with this stuff, it's intimidating as hell. And when you're seeing this just kind of go all over the place, it's hard to kind of conceptualize that there is a stopping to it because of the amount, you know, and just, again, it's wild. You're not going to chase that. You're not going to chase some ATVer through Fairmount Park or wherever, you know, in a police car. You're not John McClane in Die Hard 4, right? You know, you're not going to go through the park to chase these things. So
Well, I'm not going to put somebody's life in danger. I'm not going to put my career at risk so that I can chase down a kid on an ATV and give him what amounts to traffic tickets. Right. I'm not. I'll write him $300 worth of fines, but I did that at the risk of my livelihood. No, and that would go against the instructions we've been given anyway. We are not to pursue them.
yeah,
Right.
you
So we've
can't.
got to find creative and alternative ways to stop it, and none of them have been fully effective yet.
And let's be honest about this, because I haven't seen them in the city. You know, we're not building and selling ATVs in the city, so they're coming from somewhere. And typically they're coming from theft out in suburbia.
Right.
You know, you had even said, what is it?
So a lot of the ways we've seen them acquire these is somebody will have one on Letgo or Facebook Marketplace or some similar platform, and they'll meet up. They'll call and say, hey, let's meet up at this park in or near the city. And when the person gets there with the ATV, they'll either test drive it and just take off, or they'll commit an actual robbery and steal it from the person and chase them out of the area. So a lot of these things are coming from thefts. Either they're breaking into people's garages and sheds and taking them, or they're outright robbing people for them or stealing them directly from people. So none of these things, very rarely are these things something that they have purchase records for or a title for. I mean, they're someone else's property that they're ultimately riding through the cities anyway.
So we really need this figured out. We just, you know, we're not going to do it here. I mean, we're not.
Cop and the shrink aren't going to solve this.
We're not going to solve it. But it's worth mentioning today because of that fear of this now. It's that, you know, people are afraid to kind of go certain places and drive certain places because of these things. And hopefully lawmakers could figure this one out. You know, again, it's not the individual cop, it's the lawmaker. So hopefully they can figure it out. before we wrap up today, a little longer segment and all that, but we do want to pay a little respect to Colin Powell. 84 years old, passed away this morning of COVID-19 complications, is what the family has said. This hit deep, and I put this out there because I have always admired Colin Powell. Always.
He really is kind of one of the last vestiges of what we've known in our nation's history is like the elder statesman, right?
Yeah.
He's a military general, rose all the way through the ranks of the military to become, to become part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Secretary of State, advisor to presidents,
Right.
Supreme Commander of our military forces. This is a man who is like the epitome of what used to be our elder statesman. His career was Dwight Eisenhower's career.
Right.
And so we've lost a bit of the United States today.
I had personally thought, and this is just me, in the world, that he would be the first African American president. Like Barack Obama was never in my wheelhouse. I would never think about it. I thought Colin Powell, that's our man. Let's get him in there, and not just because he was African American, because of how much this guy commanded leadership. I mean, when we talk about that old guard, I mean, my God. And look, okay, all political stuff aside, whether Republican, Democrat, or whatever it is, this was a guy that spoke to the masses and people could listen to him.
And he really did bridge that divide.
Yeah.
Like there were he wasn't a partisan guy. He bridged that. He always did what was in the best interest of the United States. He was never the guy who cared about what your politics were. It was right, it was wrong. He was the guy. And to his credit, he never had that ambition. He never wanted to be the president. He never had the ambition to be the president. I think Secretary of State, he was honored to serve us.
Right.
And I think that was probably as high as he had the ambition to go. He didn't.
Right. Just a sad day for that. And I guess that started the Monday off wrong, and hopefully the Monday for everybody will get better. But clearly, rest in peace. This was an epitome of a leader. If you Google Colin Powell quotes, profound. I mean, really, really profound statements that he's made. Some very honorable statements. Things that are out there that I don't think people really pay credence to. Just a good man, is what it is. A good person, So rest in peace with that. So that brings us to the end, my friend.
Another day.
This is episode 6. We're at the end of episode 6. That's crazy. We've been doing this a while. We haven't killed each other.
And what are we, Mr. Producer, we up to, 34, 35 followers now?
We got, Harold has 3 OnlyFans followers. They subscribed at $8.99. So
absolutely not true.
So make sure you head over to the Shrink, or the Cop and the Shrink. God, just head over to the Shrink.
I get top billing.
Go to the copandtheshrink.com.
I get top billing.
He gets top billing. Thecopandtheshrink.com. Check out the podcast. Also, check us out on YouTube, on Instagram, and make sure you listen to us on anywhere you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple, whatever it is. I mean, we're this is everywhere now. We've gone global. We got people in Helsinki listening to us.
Perfect.
It's awesome. So check us out for our next episode. Again, copandtheshrink.com. You have a glorious, glorious, glorious life until we talk to you next.
We'll see you all next week, everybody.